Okay, so we're learning the Igeres haTeshuva on page 189. It's the third section of Tanya, although in the Tanyas that we use, it doesn't say an introduction. In the Luach HaTikkun, in the back of Tanya, it says that the printer omitted the brief introduction, which says Likutei Amorim. The name of this book, Tanya, is called Likutei Amorim, a collection of sayings. Chelik Shlishi, the third section, Hanikra, that's called B'Shem, with the name Igeres haTeshuva. So we don't have that printed, and why they didn't insert it, because in the original, the Alter Rebbe wrote that. The Alter Rebbe himself wrote that. I don't know, but this is a fact. So what we know from this is that Igeres haTeshuva is the third section of Tanya. And why am I saying that? Because you could argue that each of the sections have nothing to do with each other. The first section, Likutei Amorim, the Alter Rebbe says, Hanikra B'Shem Sefer Shel Beinanim, that's called with the name, the book of the intermediates, the book for the average person, Sefer Shel Beinanim, is all about, the potential Beinani, as we learned at length in the first 53 chapters. The second section is about faith in God, unity of God, reconciling creation with God. What does that have to do with the first section? In other words, it's as though it's a separate sefer. It's a separate book of 12 chapters. And the same is with Igeres haTeshuva. As we will learn, it's all about Tshuva. So what does it have to do with the first section? So the first thing you have to know, that the Baal Tanya, the author himself, says, no, wrong. It's all one sefer called Likutei Amorim. And so far, I've divided it into three sections. So this is coming from the author. So therefore, we understand that there's a relationship between the three. And the Rebbe once spoke about this, and I'll make it very brief. I think you have some of it in lessons in Tanya already. But basically, the Rebbe said, the previous Rebbe said actually, the Rebbe explained it. The previous Rebbe said that the four sections of Tanya, right? Sefer Shel Beinanim, Shari Yichud ve'Emunah, Igeres haTeshuva, and then the fourth section, Igeres HaKodesh, correspond to the four Chalokim of Shulchan Aruch. Chaim, then there's Yeridea, Chaim, Yeridea, Eben Ezer, and Choshe Mishpat. Also, it corresponds to the four letters of the Yud Kei Vav Kei. The Rebbe explained it at length. I'll make it just very brief. One nakuda. In other words, when we speak about Avram, God's name, the ineffable name of Yud Kei Vav Kei, it's not just four letters put together. It's a composite of one idea called God. How God expresses himself through Yud, first K, Vav, and the last K. Okay? Isser. And this is explained at length in Chassidus. And I'm not going into that now either, just giving you the facts. So it's also with the Shulchan Aruch. The Code of Jewish Law, it's not four separate sections. It's one common thread of living a Jewish holy life as dictated by God Almighty, expressed in four ways. daily law, kosher law, marriage law, divorce law, and monetary law. Basically comprising all of one's experiences. So Isser, using that idea, the same is with the Sefer of this Tanya. It's not that the first section is for the Beinoni, and the second and third are for tzaddikim, or Bali Tshuva, and have no connection. Wrong, they all have a connection. We have to find the connection. We have to work on that. So therefore, the Alter Rebbe's opening words that are omitted here in the printed Tanya, we have it as we have it today, but were in the original, and therefore are valid, is an integral part to know that Igeres haTeshuva is the third section of Likutei Amorim. So if one wants to have the full gamut of Likutei Amorim, which is the sefer that this author, the Baal HaTanya, wrote, the third section is important for the understanding and follow through of number one and number two. And just speaking out loud, the first section is about Moyach Shalat al Alev. Okay, if we had to sum up, what is the first section of Tanya about? Mind over matter. Right? The second section that we just finished, Shara Yichud Ve'emunah, is about faith in God. Right? Both those two, without the element of Teshuvah, are lacking, are missing. What are they missing? Practical behavior. Shape up or ship out. In other words, say, sir, you want to now follow a trajectory of self-improvement. Hey, we know there were and there are, and Avram, you're from California, all these kinds of self-improvement approaches from the 60s and 70s, Werner Erhard, and on and on. I've met people like that. I'm sure you've met people like that. So why do we need Torah? Why do we need Hasidus? Go to a seminar, read a book, Dale Carnegie and Company, and you'll be fine. And so, regarding the second section, which is up the alley of Isser philosophy, philosophize. And hopefully you'll come to some of the same conclusions, and if not, okay. So, but in other words, why can't I read Aristotle and Plato and other philosophers, and then Rab Saadia Gaon and the Rambam, Jewish philosophers? So Jewish philosophers lead you to Torah and mitzvahs. Aristotle and Plato don't necessarily lead you to Torah and mitzvahs. But why must I have tshuva? And the answer is because with philosophy, you either will get it right or you'll get it wrong. I just was listening to, a little bit before the shir, to a podcast of two former Frum people, fully Frum, and Chabadniks. And I know, both, one of them I know the family name, and very bright, and completely intellectually, they're not doing tshuva. They're not doing Igeres haTeshuva. They're involved in Shara Yichud Ve'emunah. And therefore, they laud certain teachers they had, and they even shed a tear, and they'll go to the Ohel. But when it comes to practical life, putting on tefillin, putting on the mezuzah, surrendering, which is tshuva, they won't do. Not yet. They did it once, but now they're in a mode of, I know better. And, and Rabbi Yoel Kahn, for example, he didn't know Nietzsche. He didn't know Newton. He knew Alter Rebbe, he knew Rambam, he knew all that. And he was gifted and a genius there. But there are other disciplines and philosophies. That's where Igeres haTeshuva comes in. And Igeres haTeshuva tells the philosopher of Shari'ichet ve'emunah, you want your philosophy to be in accordance with God, you have to do tshuva. And what is tshuva? Surrendering to God the way he describes in Torah, even though you understand otherwise. Oh. So that is how Igeres haTeshuva that we're about to start learning complements the second section of Tanya Shari'ichet ve'emunah and the first section, Likutei Amarim, which is self-improvement, Moyer Shalat Alev. Is it clear? You understand? Yeah, no questions? Because it's very important to get the trajectory.
Questions on the next part.
On which part?
Igeres haKodesh.
Oh.
Igeres haKodesh.
Wait. I know, Isser, you asked me the same thing a year ago. And I'm so happy that you still have the question. And that you're still learning at the shiur. That shows that you're on the right path. Because we don't know everything. And guess what? Maybe I won't have the answer for you. Or maybe the answer won't be satisfactory. But that's Igeres haTeshuva. You don't throw it all out. That's what makes Avram the difference between a frum yid and someone who's not yet frum is this nekudah, this point. Just because I don't understand or I don't relate or I don't feel, I surrender. That's the bottom line. Do I surrender to God Almighty although I don't get it? And it's not easy, especially for someone who's philosophically minded, intellectually oriented. These are, for that type of person, these questions and these issues are very, very bothersome. And it doesn't let you rest. But we learn from Yidden who lived life in the past, and we read their works, or we hear them speak, and we hear them teach, and we see that they also didn't have all the answers, beginning with Moshe Rabbeinu. I don't know. Hoidu v'lo voish. He admitted, I don't know. Moshe Rabbeinu. The Rambam. Right? We don't have all the answers. So anyway, going back to the point, this is, I just wanted to give an introduction to the importance of Igeres haTeshuva as it applies to section 1 and section 2 of Tanya. Let's begin now, page 180. Perek Aleph. Tanya b'Seif Yuma, it's brought in a brisa at the end of Tractate Yuma, Shloishe Chalukei Kapora Heim. There are 3 divisions, categories of atonement. And with each one, v'tshuva in kol echad. And tshuva is necessary with each of the 3. And let's learn to continue from the brisa. Avar, number 1. Avram mitzvah say if someone desecrated a positive commandment, v'shav, and the person did tshuva, the person regretted not fulfilling the positive commandment that God instructed. Says the brisa, ein azaz misham, one is not budged and moved from there. In other words, that tshuva is not adequate. Ad shemoichlin loy, until until he's pardoned. We'll explain later. That's number 1. The second category of Ram mitzvahs alo sesei. What if someone desecrated a prohibited commandment? Lo sesei, do not do this and this, and the person did it. V'shav, and the person regretted. And the tshuva, says the brisa, tshuva tole, Tshuva keeps you hanging. V'Yom HaKippurim mechaper. And in that scenario, Yom Kippur atones. When it comes Yom Kippur, and you participate in Yom Kippur through fasting and everything else, the day itself atones for your desecration of a lo saseh. The Alter Rebbe will continue later in the chapter with the third section of the Brisa. But immediately here, the Alter Rebbe says, Pirush in the parentheses, the meaning of the previous stated Brisa, Afagav Dili'inyan Kiyim Mitzvah Saseh. Although regarding the fulfillment of Mitzvah Saseh, Gedoyla Shedoiches Lo Saseh, it is greater because it pushes aside a prohibition. For example, tzitzis, Hashem says, right, in the Ahafta, you shall wear tzitzis. Avram, one of the tzitzis is made of wool and linen together, which is shatnez. It's a prohibition. You know what the halacha is? Asay doche lo saseh. The mitzvah asay of wearing tzitzis pushes aside the mitzvahs lo saseh of shatnez, and you wear those tzitzis. What do we see from here, seemingly? That which is more powerful, asay or lo saseh? Asay? Because the proof is, when it comes to a scenario where you have both coming together, the Chazal, the sages teach us, asay doche lo saseh. What did we learn just before in the tractate Yuma? One second, please, give me a minute. What did we learn at the end of tractate Yuma? It says there that for not doing a positive commandment, I'm sorry, I learned it wrong. I read it wrong before. I said tshuva is not adequate. Wrong. Tshuva is enough, and therefore you're atoned. But when it comes to desecrating a lo saseh, the Mishnah, the Brisa says tshuva is toleh. Tshuva keeps you hanging, kind of, and until Yom Kippur, you don't have forgiveness. What does that imply? Which is stronger? Which is higher? Which is greater? A lo saseh or aseh? A lo saseh. So that's why for a lo saseh you need Yom Kippur, and for not doing a mitzvah aseh, all you need is tshuva. So it seems to be a contradiction. This is what the Alter Rebbe is responding to in this parenthesis. Let me just finish it first, and then I'll take your point, the question. Answers the Alter Rebbe to his rhetorical question, Hainu, the reason why a mitzvah saseh is doche lo saseh is mishum shaydeki a mitzvah saseh mamshich or v'shefa ba'olam es elyonim. It's because through the fulfillment of an aseh you draw down light, energy, and shefa, and influence to the upper worlds. From the emanation of the infinite light of God. As it says in the Zohar HaKadosh, the Ramach Pikud, in the 248 positive commandments, Inun Ramach Evorim de Malka, they allude to the 248 limbs of the king, referring to God the king. Vigam, and not only do you draw down energy to the spiritual worlds, but you draw down also energy when you do a mitzvah saseh, al nafshe likis, upon your own godly soul. As it says, asher kidishonu, right? When we make a bracha for mitzvah saseh, we say asher kidishonu, God has made us holy, He sanctified us, b'mitzvaysav. So in other words, we, Isser, become holy, we become kadosh, through mitzvaysav, through His mitzvahs. So, what's the Alter Rebbe answering to his rhetorical question? That regarding kiyum, regarding fulfillment, asay is greater than lo sasay. Because asay draws down a light, whereas lo sasay, you don't draw down any light. You don't draw down a light. Asay means you positive, proactive. Lo sasay means you're abstaining. So you know what a lo sasay does? It cleans up the room. The Alter Rebbe says in Parshas Bolek and L'Kutei Torah, it's analogous to preparing a room for a king. What's the first thing you have to do? Clean it up. Get rid of the schmutz. Once you get rid of the schmutz, you have to bring in furniture. Lo saseh is cleaning up the room. Do not do this. And if you do it, you have to clean up the room with tshuva and Yom Kippur. But that's, in other words, for what we will call tikkun. So we have two things. I want you to hear this and think about it. Kiyum and tikkun. As far as kiyum, as far as fulfillment, Avram, fulfillment, asay is greater than lo sasay, because by asay you draw down a light, and lo sasay you don't draw down a light. As far as tikkun is concerned, guess what? Lo sasay is greater than asay. Because lo sasay means I messed up. And when we mess up, we leave a mark. There's DNA. There's blood on the glove from that famous O.J. Simpson fiasco, right? There is a remnant left over. Moshe Myers, I got your attention, I see. There is a remnant. We, excuse the expression, screwed up. When you mess up, there's blood left on a glove. No one wants to be around that. You got to clean it up. Nebbe, Choyel with October 7th now. The Chevra Kadisha goes around cleaning up the blood that's spilled and to put it into the caver. It has to be cleaned up. So as far as Leis Haseh is concerned, a mess was made. And a mess is made, it needs tikkun. But in no way, and I say, put on tefillin, you didn't put on tefillin, you didn't leave a stain. You know what you did? You just didn't draw down the energy that you could have drawn down through putting on tefillin. But you didn't leave a stain. A pagam in Hebrew. You didn't leave a pagam, sir. The pagam issue is through lo saseh. The drawing down of energy is an aseh issue. That's what the Alter Rebbe is saying here. That it's not a contradiction. Because when Chazal say aseh doche lo saseh, that when you have a contradiction between a mitzvah aseh and a lo saseh, like wearing tzitzis while it's shatnez, there you're talking about drawing down energy. So the energy is stronger. It outweighs the prohibition. But when it comes to doing tshuva for a stain, for a pagam, there the Chazal say at the end of Sof Yuma, what do they say? They say there you have to work twice as hard to clean up the mess. And think of it, just practically. Let's be practical. It's so much harder to clean up a mess than to draw down positive energy, right? You know, someone who's not religious, you pull them into a Chabad house, you pull them into a shul, you say, put your tefillin on, here, come make a bracha, sit by the table. Why not? I don't know what a bracha is, I don't know what tefillin is, you told me to do it, fine. Years later, you learn about it. In other words, it's much easier to relate to asay, but it's so much more difficult to stop a bad habit. That's a lot more difficult. So whatever it is, whether it be eating a cheeseburger or being a jerk and not a mensch and treating another person properly, which is also a lo saseh, right? That's much harder to change. So that's what the Alter Rebbe says. It's not a contradiction. The Mishnah Sof Yuma is talking about the stain part, the tikkun part, right? The Mishnah is giving you 3 categories of sins that need tikkun. The Mishnah is not talking about the positive aspect of doing mitzvahs. Whereas when Chazal talk about mitzvahs asay, they're talking about the positive aspect. Yes, before I go further, now, Issa, what do you want to say?
I never thought about this, but how do we done between mitzvah asek docha lo taseh and mitzvah hababa avera?
I think the simple answer, I say simple, mitzvah haba ba'avera is when you intentionally have that in mind. When you...
But I know that shatnez is an isser, and I intentionally put it on my tzitzis, my wool tzitzis. I put linen, my wool garment. I put linen tzitzis.
I think the answer is...
I never.
Right.
How we distinguish.
Right. It's a good point you're making. It's something that I want to think about it. Thank you for raising the question. But I have this feeling that the answer is that mitzvah haba ba'avera means I'm going to do a mitzvah knowing quite well that it's an avera. By esa docha los esa, it's not that I want to do it this way. I have to do it this way.
I'll give you a practical.
Wait. Issa, did you hear? You jumped. Did you hear what I said?
No, I did hear. Come Sukkot time, when people put their sukkahs on the sidewalks and the streets without permission, mitzvah haba ba'avera or mitzvah saseh docha lo taseh.
Well, that's that example. I don't know that example. You're assuming that it's an avera putting a sukkah on a sidewalk.
You have to have permission.
Okay, so that goes into a thing called dina de malchus dina, right? That's a Pandora's box. There's a lot of discussion about that. Okay, it's not that simple the way you're saying it. It could be the end will be that you're right, but it's a big discussion. I looked into this years ago. This topic of dina de malchus dina. One aspect, if my memory serves me well, dina de malchus dina means that the government, the malchus, says it must be this way. What if you do something that isn't a violation of the way it must be, but it's you do it, but it's like not the way they would want it, but it's not against what they would want. The example.
Al pi halacha, not dina malchus dina. Al pi halacha. Can I go on your property and put up a sukkah?
My property is different than public property. My property cannot.
Okay.
And by the way, sir, and even that is not simple. My neighbor built out right here. I'm pointing to the backyard, an extension blocking the sun. Now,
whole Simon and Shulchan Aruch on this.
Exactly. And I went to some Rabbonim and they said, you have you could take him to a bezdin before, to go to court. I mean, this is a serious violation. Then someone else said, well, the Mishnah, the halacha speaks about just the blocking of the window, not the blocking of part of the wall. And the sun is not an argument. The window might be. Hezekiah, all of that. My point is, the point I'm saying is that when you say, he builds it on your property, yeah, initially that's definitely wrong and against halacha. I agree. But the public property. But why are we talking about this? You wanted to give this as an example.
I never considered how we distinguish between a mitzvah saseh docha lo
Saseh and
Mitzvah Bavavera.
Right. Okay, I will.
It's getting too tangential and on
Yeah,
point, but
yeah,
if,
but
if there is a rule, if there are rules and you
yeah,
find out, just let me
yeah.
know.
Avram, you're following our discussion, Isser and I's discussion.
Yeah, I understand it. Yeah.
Okay, so
Sure.
I want to discuss this with some big Talmidei Chachamim because it is a good point, but I think that the mitzvah boba is almost like intentional. That's and the esed docha los esed is it's not coming from the intentional point. It's because you're mechuyev. Okay, let me get back to it, Bli Neder. Anyway, let's go back to the piece of Tanya here. Ava le'inyan tshuva, but regarding the aspect of tshuva, although one is pardoned. Oh, 1 second. What is the Alter Rebbe saying now with the words Ava le'inyan tshuva? This is what he's addressing. If you're telling me that Mitzvahs Aseh Docha Lo Seser emphasizes the kiyum, the fulfillment, and the Mishnah Sof Yuma, the Brisa, emphasizes the tikkun, so why does the Mishnah say you have to do tshuva for Aseh? In other words, seemingly tshuva is wiping away the stain, the mark, the pagam, the blemish, and we just finished explaining that when it comes to mitzvah say, it's not about a blemish, it's about you didn't draw down the light you could have drawn down. So why do you have to do tshuva? That's what the Alter Rebbe addresses now. Although the Mishnah says for mitzvah say, by doing tshuva, you won't get a punishment for not doing what you were supposed to do. The Alter Rebbe says here the idea of tshuva is al shemored b'malchusi yisbarich v'loy osa maimer hamelech. You know what tshuva helps when it comes to mitzvah say? For the rebellion. Here's a third nekuda, chevra, the rebellion. And as far as the rebellion against God, God says put tefillin on, and you say no, I'm not putting on tefillin. You have rebelled. Forget about whether you left a stain, a mark, or you didn't, or whether you drew down the light. You're an outright chutzpinyak. You have audacity. You are a mored, a rebellious. For that you need to do tshuva. Says the Alter Rebbe now, so although you do tshuva for the rebellion, mikol mokem ha'or nedar, guess what? It don't change the facts on the ground. What are the facts on the ground? The energy that you were supposed to draw down through putting on tefillin, ne'edar, is missing and lacking. V'chulu. U'kamayim razal, and as the sages say, al pasik, mu'uvas lo yuchol asakin, there are certain sins that you cannot correct. Say Chazal, the sages teach, this refers to Zeh shebitel krishma shel arvis or shachris v'chulu. This refers to someone who desecrates the nightly krishma, the morning krishma, by not saying it. You can't make it up. I did tshuva. I feel terrible that I didn't say krishma at night. The bottom line is you didn't say krishma, you didn't draw down that energy. And Chazal say, it's amongst the sins that cannot be corrected. There's no tikkun. By the way, Alter Rebbe, if you remember in section 1 of Tanya, chapter 7, spoke about a way where you can get tshuva for that too, through tshuva mi'ava. But tshuva mi'ava rabba, tshuva from great abundant love. But he's not talking about that now. What do you want to say, Avram? I see you clicked. Yes.
What about if a person has up to learn Torah, and they don't do it?
You're asking me if it's in the category of mu'uvas layuchal asakin?
Would that apply? You wouldn't bring down a light. You wouldn't.
It wouldn't.
Didn't do a.
I don't want to answer without. I think it does, but I want to check that. I think I heard something, but I have to. The point is like this: that every mitzvah saseh, when not done, the light is lacking. The Alter Rebbe, Avram, is comparing it to what Chazal say about certain mitzvahs that if you don't do them, you can't make them up. So he's saying, what's the logic? Why can't you make it up? Because you missed today Krishma. So I'll do tshuva. Very nice, you'll do tshuva. So, in other words, the fact that you didn't say today, you rebelled against God, and you do tshuva, the tshuva will help for the rebellion. But the light wasn't drawn down. Now you're asking if that applies to every moment learning Torah? It could be. It could be. But is that supposed to make us feel better or worse, Avram? Because the Chazal say, the Alter Rebbe brought it earlier in Tanya, there are three mitzvahs that we can't get away from not desecrating them daily, and one is learning every moment. So if the Chazal say that, God is saying it, and God understands, and He finds a way to pardon us. In other words, Shloisha Dvorim, right? What is it? Bittul Torah. But that Chazal itself, Moshe, that Chazal itself is telling us, I understand you people. You're not going to be learning every moment. I'm not going to give you a free ride, but at the same time, I'm understanding in the sense that that's the way it is. Okay, we'll stop here.
So is that
yes.
Sorry, Rabbi, if you don't do Shema, let's say Bisman in the morning, right?
So that's another question and nuance. That the question is whether you don't do Shema at all or you don't do it Bisman. I have to.
Audience today.
Yeah. I'm not going to jump to answer that because plenty of people, not just in Bet Shemesh, but right here in good old Borough Park and Flatbush and Toronto, who miss, now Shabbos 8:30 is the Zman. So some people sleep in, but I'll tell you something. It's a serious issue that I was trained and I was raised to be cognizant of, and to take it very seriously. And the few times that I missed, I felt very bad. In other words, I could have been up all night, and I was planning on getting up, or there were times I remember I ran, and I said, I have a minute or two. What do? I didn't say brachas, so I say Shema right first thing. The point, listen,
Okay.
The point is we got to take it seriously. Go ahead.
I hear. So the question I was going to ask related to that is, forgetting about the specific of the Shema B'Zman Boker, but in terms of if you miss a Taseh, if you miss something that we should do, are we held accountable in Shemayim? Oh, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you didn't do this. We're held accountable. It's on the scale. It's on the scale.
There's no question about it. But remember what it says in chapter 7 of the first section of Tanya, through Tshuva Mi'ava, Rabbah, through this intense Tshuva, even that's pardoned. The only thing the Alter Rebbe mentions there that is like impossible is the illicit relationships where there's a drop of semen going into another body, and creating. And even that, there are stories of a way of tshuva which aren't pleasant, which I don't want to go into right now. But outside of those things, as long as it's you and you can deal with it, there's a way to draw down the light, but with tshuva miyav. But again, since he's not talking about it here, he doesn't mention it. So the answer would be, Moshe, to your point, if someone missed Krishma, and the Chazal say what they say, let him intensify his own Krishma. Let him get other people to get up on time to say Krishma. And when you show and you work hard, then you show that your tshuva really is deep and meaningful, and then it's a tshuva miyava rabbah from great abundant love, and you have atonement at that time as well. Okay, good learning. We'll learn tomorrow. Zai, everyone have a great day. Shalom. Bye-bye.
Amen.